Thank you so much for those remarks, Dean Payne. At this time, I am happy to introduce and welcome to the podium our first student speaker, Will Gibson, from the class of 2020.
President Garvey, Dean Payne, Mr. Shields, distinguished faculty, alumni, family, and friends. Thank you to everyone here who worked hard to make today happen, and to everyone who is here with us. For those who couldn't join us here today, thank you for being with us virtually. I was asked to adjust this year's speech and to shorten it a smidge, presumably because last year they heard the 5-minute version and decided I'd lose the audience in the 3rd minute. I jest, but I've adjusted this speech to account for the last year and the different places the class of 2020 might be today. If you don't like this version, last year's lives in perpetuity on YouTube. And if you don't like either, you're really in luck because Josh from the class of 2021 is going to do a great job, and I got to go first. There are 3 things we can learn from this last year, and from law school generally, that will help us shape our own careers. The first is gratitude. No, Zoom did not actually replace presence, and Netflix content grew boring, but we can be grateful that we were able to communicate with friends and family throughout this past year in a way that generations past would not have been able to. We can be grateful for the gift of time that we were given by commuting less and not worrying about personal hygiene. But most of all, we should be grateful to our friends and family who have helped us not only in the last year, but throughout our whole law school career. Someone helped you move in, maybe spied you a few bucks or a meal here or there, or maybe a spouse or friend made you meals while you blue booked. Second, last year I said we can learn to be resilient, but I think we learned it. I had a lot more to say, but after making it through law school, and the class of 2020 dealt with upended job opportunities, bar exam dates, policies, and standards changing up to last minute, I think there's been enough said, and undeniably, you're a resilient group. Third, we can learn humility. Humility is not necessarily the first attribute the world thinks of when they think of a lawyer, but it can be. What does humility mean as a lawyer? I think this first year of practice has probably taught us a lot in developing this virtue. We all entered law school with a skull full of mush, and our professors helped form that mush into analytical minds. Humility now means being grateful for the training we were given and taking the feedback we receive in our workplaces to continue to improve. Humility down the road will mean helping young attorneys in the way we were guided along the way. Last year, I ended with a series of quotes from our professors that will live with us for years to come. And surely each member of both the classes of 2020 and 2021 have memories and quotes from different professors and different experiences that they remember. And so I hope when these respective classes assemble over the many years in life to come, they will laugh and remember those quotes. But today I will leave you with a different one that's been used many times in many speeches around the hallowed halls of the Columbus School of Law, but one that echoes both the schools and each of our own missions so well that it's inscribed on the side of the building. It's even been used in graduations at this very school, but the incredible thing about Scripture is that it's God-breathed and applicable in each time in a way that is ever ancient and ever new. So I leave you with these words today from Micah chapter 6, verse 8, so that you may apply them to your life and your career. He has told you, mortal one, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. Thank you, and I look forward to speaking next year. Just joking. Congratulations.